If you're just becoming an agent because you want to have your license, I don't think it's worth it. I've leveraged some investor decks to show your credibility of who you are and why they should partner with you on real estate deals. He just reached out of the blue, said, "Hey, do you have any buyers in this area?" And I said, "Yeah, me."
I don't want to die at my desk. It sounds super morbid, like when I share my story, because that was the beginning of there has to be more. I don't want to do this forever.
I don't think anything's truly passive,
Right.
save for a very short list of things.
Yeah.
But you start to fill your mostly passive bucket. It's just interesting to see how one catalyst like that can lead to multiple years of transformation and ultimately, in many ways, reinventing your identity.
We can do this. Real estate investing is for regular people too. And we found ourselves in a community that helped us figure that out.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today, I'm joined by investing duo and co-hosts of the Agent to Investor podcast, Anna Bialik and Nico Garcia. Anna and Nico are both accomplished investors, real estate agents, and entrepreneurs. The depth of each of their bios is incredible, from previous professional endeavors to starting and raising families. This episode allows us to peel back the onion on the unique perspective they have as investor-friendly real estate agents who are actively investing themselves. We also get into the personal stuff, like how their mindset has evolved over time, the effect of their childhood experiences and some traumas they've encountered, and how they integrate their partners and families into their investing journey. There is so much wisdom packed into this interview. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of career, family, and finances. Learn the mindsets, tips, and strategies to help you on your personal journey to build a life of abundance and purpose for you and your family. Now here's your host, Aaron Amin. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Real Estate Professional Podcast. Today I am joined by not one, but two guests, my friends Nico Garcia and Anna Bialik. Both of them are real estate investors, agents, and wonderful people that I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the past few months. I would love to just have you guys take a couple minutes to introduce yourselves in your own words. Why don't we start with you, Anna?
Okay. I'm Anna Bialik. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I have spent most of my life living in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC. I feel like I have to qualify that because I usually say Virginia and people automatically think Richmond or something like that. But no, I'm right outside of the capital of our great country. I worked for the Department of Navy actually for 20 years. That was my first career. And then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore after some events happened in our lives. And I became a licensed real estate agent, Virginia licensed in about 3 years ago. And we started investing, my husband and I, about 2 years ago, because I realized I was still working for money, even as a real estate agent. And I didn't want to do that forever. So that's me in a nutshell.
A very small nutshell. There's so much more there, but we'll get to that. How about you,
Yeah.
Nico?
Yeah. So my name is Nico Garcia. I am born and raised here in Montgomery County, Maryland. I come from a Peruvian and American Italian background. I have always been in entrepreneurial. I worked in solar before I got licensed as a real estate agent. So I did sales, selling people just solar panels on their home. I love that because it taught me a lot of the sales skills and being comfortable with rejection and things like that. But yeah, in 2020, I got licensed as a real estate agent. It came secondhand because I was working with my father, who is a contractor, and we were doing fix and flips and handing them off to other agents. He was like, "Nico, just get your license so we can keep it all in house." So that's how I got licensed as an agent. And I was working as an agent, still currently working as an agent. That's actually how Anna and I met at a previous brokerage. And I love helping people buy, sell. I would say my specialty is helping people buy their first home as a millennial. And then last year is really when I got into real estate investing in early 2023. My brother and I bought our first investment property. Since then, we've bought 2 more, and I'm currently under contract on our first house hack. So really dove deep in the investing world. I understand the power of owning real estate. And just like Anna said, we are real estate agents, but we really only get what we put in. I want to make sure that I'm doing a little bit of both, obviously getting the active income, but working towards building generational wealth with real estate. That's a little bit about me.
And a little birdie tells me that you love soccer too.
Yeah, sure do. Yep. Been playing my whole life. I think I started when I was 4 years old with some family members and been playing ever since. So I still play to this day. Actually, I have a game tonight, indoor soccer. So I play Tuesdays and Sundays, obviously not as competitive as it was when I was in college playing soccer, but I still love it and I'm going to do it until I can't anymore. Yes.
I love it. So one of the themes of this podcast, or really the theme of this podcast, the hybrid real estate professional. Hybrid professional is someone who takes skills, knowledge, income, or any other type of resource from a previous part of their life and applies it to real estate. You are both very much embodiments of that, right? Nico, you had an entrepreneurial background. You've sold solar. I think you have a business with your brother. You've participated in a business with your father. Anna, you were in the military. You've had a couple different chapters in your professional career. Your mom, so many different areas of your life that you can pull in and inform your experience as investors. But namely, you both mentioned becoming agents and using that to get familiar with the industry, understand the anatomy of transactions, learn how to work with people, negotiate, all these different skill sets that I think can only help you as investors. That's probably the most close parallel, but I really do to touch back on some of the even stuff like playing recreational soccer, like that stuff, and taking time for yourself, your health, all of that makes you who you are, right? So that's the kind of lens I would like to apply as we go through the rest of the conversation here. But one thing I noticed from both your stories right away was that things escalated pretty quickly, right? So Anna, you got your license just a few years ago, and then you said you only started investing a couple years ago. But can you take us through like the current composure of your portfolio? Because that's a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time.
Yes. So our current portfolio, we are out of state investors from where we currently live because in this area in the DMV, if anyone's familiar with outside of DC, it's very expensive, like to get in. And it's not necessarily a cash flow market. This is definitely more of a fix and flip appreciation type market. So we decided we were looking for cash flow. Where do we go? So we ended up with, we have 6 stores in Ohio. It's 3 properties, 6 stores in Ohio. We have 1 door in North Carolina. That was actually our very first, I'll call accidental investment. That was our COVID house that we thought, hey, this would be a great investment. That's before we knew what that actually meant. Luckily, we bought, and so we were able to pivot that into a short-term, midterm rental. So that's going well for us. And then we have 2 duplexes that are currently being renovated down in Southern Virginia, right near the North Carolina border, that hopefully they will be up and running by the end of the year. In total, once those are done, we're up to 11 doors.
In what order did you do the out of state first? Did you do the COVID house first? What's this?
So the COVID house happened first. That was in 2020. Like it truly was like we went on vacation. Rates were super low. We were like, wow, this is great. Let's refinance our primary residence and buy this house. And the interest rates were so low on both of them that our monthly payment only went up by like $100 and for 2 houses versus 1. So we're like, this is great. But initially we didn't really rent it out, only friends and family, because I saw it as a second home. And I was like, I don't want people in my house. And that's before I had the real estate investor mindset. And then I went to a local meetup and kept going to this local meetup with my husband, Brian. And that kind of shifted our perspective. So we put that into service as a rental. And then we ended up buying the 3 properties in Ohio. And we recently picked up the properties in Southern Virginia this year.
Okay, so the Ohio rentals, how did you pick that market and kind of what was the evolution? Because you didn't just buy one, you ended up buying several. What was that process?
We ended up buying several. We read all the books. We did a lot of the research. And I will say, I probably because of our government history, Brian's retired Navy. He was a submarine officer. I was a Navy civilian. So that's actually how we met. We were very much into the data. And so I think we got stuck in analysis paralysis. So we knew we wanted something in that Midwest area that was like low cost points, high rentals. And I'll be honest, it wasn't like scientific at all. I follow this Instagram account that's like, save this old house. And there was a house listed in Akron, Ohio. And I was like, where the hell is Akron? So I looked up Akron and I started doing research and it was actually a really good market. So like the numbers just worked. So that's actually how I found the Ohio market, was because I follow an Instagram account about saving old houses.
Nice. There's so many parallels between your guys' story and ours, my wife and I, because you use the phrase accidental landlord. And I think so many people start that way, where they buy something, they don't necessarily have a intention of, oh, this is going to become part of a 10 plus unit portfolio.
Correct.
You're not thinking about it of the lens of like deal analysis and the way that we've come to think of it now, being part of these communities and working with coaches and stuff. And then you fall in love with the process somewhere along the way and you start to see the power of what it can become. And that's when you fall down the rabbit hole of the books and the podcasts and you start to do stuff like roll towards Akron, Ohio and start researching flyover markets for cash flow, right? There's usually a progression. It doesn't always start with step 2. So I like that you identify it as that accidental. And I think most people that I've talked to and interviewed have some version of that where they're discovering the identity before it becomes really ingrained in them. Okay. And then Nico, you retraced a little bit of your portfolio in your intro, but can you just retrace it again real quick?
For sure. For sure. And the only reason why I knew of Akron, Ohio is that's where LeBron James is from. So that's how I heard of it. And when Anna was telling me she bought properties, I said, LeBron James. She was like, what? But yes, so I was a real estate agent and was helping people the traditional way, buying and selling real estate. And then I think Anna mentioned we went to a meetup, a local meetup here, all about real estate investing. And it was around the same time where I got a call from a real estate attorney, one of my dad's acquaintances, about a property that was an estate sale. And my dad was going to possibly do work on it before we put it up for sale. But he said, hey, Nico, let's see if we can get pre-approved because this would be a great investment property. It's in Silver Spring. It's in a location. It's on an acre lot. So he saw the potential of what could be a great real estate deal. At the time, I had no intentions of buying a property. Long story short, we quickly got pre-approved. We actually had to have our mom get on the loan to help us get qualified, but it all happened really fast and we ended up closing on that property. Needed quite a bit of work. Having my dad there and doing all of it in-house helped us save some money. But yeah, so we renovated that and we got some tenants in there, long-term tenants. And then right around the same time where we were getting the tenants in there, so I've helped clients of mine get tenant qualifications and things like that. So I was familiar with the process. So I just did that for myself, essentially. And then we came across another deal, another estate deal, where this one is right around the time I was reading the Burr book with David Green. And so this one was, at first we were planning on fix and flipping it. And that's what my dad's bread and butter was. So we actually ended up keeping it. So and looking back, hindsight, we over renovated it for resale. So hindsight, I probably would have did a few things differently, but we used a private money partner to purchase the property and we funded the rehab. And then we ended up doing a cash out DSCR refinance on the property and pulled most of our construction costs back and we paid our private money partner off. And we have a cash flowing property in an appreciating market. So these are the 2 properties last year. And then this year we bought a fix and flip that we're currently working on. And I have a house hack. So in May, I got engaged to my fiance, Jessica, and we are super excited. Luckily, she trusts me with the real estate part. We were trying to decide whether we wanted to go the wedding route or buy a home route. I remember you, Aaron, we were talking about that when we spoke. So we decided to go the house route and it's been a long journey, actually, believe it or not. So we started this summer. We were putting out offers and just losing off on the market. And this home, luckily, it's like right across the street from my dad's house, which is very nice. And it was a pocket listing from an agent that I knew that we did a transaction, I want to say 2 years ago. And he just reached out of the blue, said, hey, do you have any buyers in this area? And I said, yeah, me. So we went out toward the property. We wrote an offer on site. They countered and we ended up moving forward with it. We are excited for that journey. We're going to be house hacking that property. But yeah, that's my portfolio currently, three properties and a 4th one on the way.
That's amazing, man. And congratulations on getting engaged and also having some of those decisions about how you want your guys' financial future to look and just like really zooming out and looking at the big picture. I think that's amazing. And I want to talk a little more about the journey for both of you of how you've engaged with your partners to build your portfolios. But before I do, there's a couple of things you said in your journey, Nico. You said we found through an estate sale or we stumbled upon an estate sale. How does one stumble upon an estate sale?
Yeah. So when I tell people this, they're like, wow, you're lucky. When the first thing I say is my dad is a contractor, they're like, oh my God, you're so lucky. So having my dad that has 30 plus years of real estate and a big book of business is really nice. So he has an attorney that is in charge of estate sales. And before we got into real estate investing, he would help fix the property up and get it ready for sale. And then since then, when I got really into real estate investing, we shifted our mindset where we were like, hey, maybe if it's a good deal, maybe we can put an offer and see if we can get it. I think having connections, not only with the attorney, our private money partner is also one of my dad's acquaintances that is retired ex-pilot that has what does coach call it? Lazy money. And he knows the power of investing in real estate. So we approached him, and I've leveraged some investor decks to show your credibility of who you are and why they should partner with you on real estate deals. But that has really been beneficial for me, for my dad, for my brother, for getting our feet wet, because you hear a lot of people say, hey, I want to invest in real estate. I don't have the money. And I think these last 2 years, I've been really trying to build my community of people that are investors. I know we're all part of the RPM community, and then I host local meetups. So we're constantly having these conversations with people, and you're really trying to figure out who you need to partner with. I meet hundreds of people every month. That's really what got me into the estate sales and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's good insight. And I think too, one comment you made, how people say, oh, you're really lucky that your dad did that and that you had that advantage. Lucky would be if he handed you the house on a silver platter and didn't ask you to do anything. But I think it's very different, and it's important to frame the context there that you express an interest, and you guys met in the middle, and like you allowed him to mentor you in certain capacities, and you worked through something that's very complex and difficult to pull off. And as a result, it has set you up in a way that you will serve you and your future wife and your future kids like long into the future. So I think it's possible he's the lucky one that he was able to share that bond with you and plant a seed and inspire you that way. So I like to put some of that stuff in perspective, because it bothers me when people maybe assume some sort of like nepotism, or that you're being handed something when in reality you're also doing the work.
Yeah. I'm super blessed, Aaron, to have parents and a brother that I'm very close with. There's a lot of trust. And looking back, my dad's the contractor. And when I was in high school, I was basically working for him in the summers where we're doing roof jobs in 95-degree weather. And I hated it looking back. I really didn't like remodeling homes. But once I got in the agency business, and I started to appreciate what he did, and I found myself knowing a little bit more of what got homes ready for rent, what homes got ready for resale. I understood pricing of kitchens and bathrooms and sidings. So I think that actually has helped me as an agent, but also as an investor, because I can eyeball it. And if I think it's a good deal, I can bring my dad in to look at it.
Yeah. Such a cool partnership you can have and experience that you can draw from. That's awesome.
For sure.
Anna,
Yes.
the military is a common theme I've heard among some of the investors that I look up to the most.
Mhm.
Oftentimes military and some sort of sports or some sort of organized discipline practice, right? It's a really common thread I see among investors. So you mentioned that you were in the Navy. I think you said on the civilian side.
Mhm.
You might have to explain what that means to me, because I don't understand the distinction. But
Okay.
then also your husband was also in the Navy too, right?
Correct. Brian was actually in uniform. He signed the dotted line to sign his life away and work 24 hours a day for a quarter an hour. I did not. I was a civilian. I was not in uniform. I didn't have to go run and do PT. I basically was hired by the Department of Navy as a civilian employee to come in, and I worked at Naval Sea Systems Command, which is one of the headquarters commands. And I did budgets and financing for most of my career on submarines. And that's actually how Brian and I met. We actually ended up meeting through that job. I was the money person. He was the technical person. We worked really well together, and we worked so well together, we ended up getting married. So it is. That's the distinction. As a civilian, I did not sign on a dotted line. I was a W-2 employee, and I didn't have to wear a uniform.
Got it. But something struck me from your bio and some of the conversations that we've had before, which is you talked about maybe it was a single moment, or maybe it was a series of moments that you realized and projected ahead that like, hey, I don't have that much time.
Yeah.
I know there was, a tragedy you witnessed, and there are some other people in your life, either professionally or personally, where this like kind of realization of how scarce time is
Yes.
really struck you and it made you shift and pivot towards what you're doing now. Can you maybe, I don't know,
Unpack that a
unpack
little bit.
whatever part of that you are comfortable telling?
Yeah, this is part of my origin story. So I started working for the Department of Navy. I was 22 years old. It was my first adult job. I thought I'm going to do this for a couple of years, and a couple of years turned into almost 20. But along the way, I had a lot of mentors that I really looked up to, especially when I was first starting out. And as I got further into my career, they were getting closer to retirement age. And several of them never quite made it to retirement age. I knew some that were getting ready to retire and got cancer, and then they passed away before they could like officially retire. And one Christmas, I was talking to someone and they're like, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Tom in the office?" And I was like, "Yeah, I saw him yesterday." And they were like, "He had a heart attack on the shuttle from LaFont Plaza to the office and he passed away." And I was like, "Oh my God, like I don't want to die at my desk." It sounds super morbid, like when I share my story, because that was the beginning of there has to be more. I don't want to do this forever. And then Brian and I were at the Navy Yard when the Navy Yard shooting happened a couple of years ago. A contractor came in on a Monday morning and decided that he wanted to shoot 12 of our coworkers. So they never made it home. And that kind of was the other, I need to figure something out. But it was scary. Even at that point, as much as I wanted to get out of the 9 to 5, like W-2 job, it's what do you do next? This is a high priced area. It's hard to like just switch jobs. And so I met someone. My husband had a coworker whose wife also used to work in the government, and she made the switch to be a real estate agent. And I met her for the first time and we talked about it, and she'd been doing it a couple of years, and she was the first person I had met that had successfully left the government and was okay. Like financially, she had figured it out. And I talked to my husband and I was like, "I'm so unhappy." And he knew I was unhappy. And I was like, "I think I really want to give real estate a shot." And he said, "Okay, let's figure out the finances, get your license. I'll stay as a contractor," because he retired and but he went back to work in regular clothes, not in uniform. And so he was holding down the fort while I became a real estate agent because I saw that as my way out. So that's how I got to be a real estate agent. Do you want me to keep going into like how the investor part came up?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I read a book. I read a lot of books. I'm like an avid reader. So I read a book called The Cash Flow Breakfast Club by Omni Casey. He's actually a broker here in Northern Virginia. I didn't know that at the time, but somehow I came across this book, probably on social media, just like my Akron market. And I read the book, and the book is about a real estate agent that is essentially still working for money and realizes that once their real estate business stops, their active income stops and they have nothing. And it talks about real estate investing, teaching you like sequential steps to becoming a real estate investor to create this passive income and this financial freedom. So I read the book and I realized he did meetups here locally because I stalked him online. He laughs when I tell the story. And I signed us up for a meeting. I told Brian, I said, "Hey, my husband," I was like, "I signed us up for this investor meeting. I don't know what's going to happen. The book was really good, but maybe we should go." And he, "Yeah, let's go." And I'm like, and he will sit by the door. And when they start selling us something, we'll leave. We'll just take off as soon as they start selling us something. And they never did. And then we kept going. And that was the catalyst to like expanding our network and our mindset and realize this is a real path forward. Like we can do this. Real estate investing is for regular people too. And we found ourselves in a community that helped us figure that out.
I love that. And I know you guys had Omni on your podcast,
Mhm.
and I know that's a common thread between the two of you. And I remember you got even deeper into that conversation about the idea of you fill your active income bucket first,
Yep.
and then you use that to fuel investments that can start to build a stream of. I'm very reluctant to use the P word, passive, because I don't think anything's truly passive,
Right.
save for a very short list of things.
Yeah.
But you start to fill your mostly passive bucket, and then ultimately it can overtake the active income, and over time you get that financial freedom that everyone seeks. But first of all, I want to thank you for sharing that personal side of your story. It's never easy when you experience those stark reminders, some of which are just natural and some of which are those completely inexplicable acts of essentially terror.
Mhm.
And I think many people are touched by things like that one way or another. Very rarely is it firsthand like that. And those are jarring, those are jolting. And it makes sense why you wanted to make a change. And the hardest part of that, though, is that the change, like you said, doesn't happen overnight. And you had a conversation with your husband, You guys made a plan that you as good partners do. He recognized that you were unhappy and he supported you in making the change that you wanted to make. But there's a big downstream impact of, okay, now we have to create a new income stream for you and a new profession and a new network. And you did all the hard work to discover what that meant to you. But it's just interesting to see how one catalyst like that can lead to multiple years of transformation and ultimately, in many ways, reinventing your identity. Today's episode is brought to you by the Remote Real Estate Academy, the community I launched last year where I personally coach investors and empower them to buy rental properties anywhere in the United States. My business partner Nathan and I have a collective 15 years experience with over 20 cash flowing out-of-state rental properties. We provide a step-by-step playbook on how you can build your own portfolio and start accessing the life-changing benefits of real estate investing starting today. Go to remoterealestateacademy.com for more info, or better yet, shoot me an email at aaron@aaronamin.com with subject line RREA, and I'll throw in a special bonus for podcast listeners who join the Academy. Now let's get to the show.
It did. Yeah. And I've heard people say, oh, just burn all the boats. But we have kids. We have a household to maintain. I couldn't just completely jump ship. Like you hear some people are like, just burn all the boats down and go full in. And we were like, we can't do that. We need to come up with a plan. But if possible, we just have to do it carefully.
You're bringing something up that I want both your take on, which is advice floating around on the internet, of which there is plenty. There's more than there needs to be. And when you mentioned that you hear that kind of burn the boats, like just drop everything and do it. I have always tried to be careful with what I say to other people and also like with how I interpret incoming information from other people, because I think advice is relative to the person who's delivering it. And then it's so hard if you make a statement out into a microphone like we're doing right now, and this episode gets consumed by 100 people, there's 100 interpretations, there's 100 circumstances, and there's just so many different things that could determine whether that was good advice or bad advice. So I think it's always important. There's two things that happen. One is comparison. Everyone, I think, unfortunately, it's a natural inclination to compare yourself to someone else. So when you see somebody else doing something awesome or that you think is awesome, you compare like, why are they able to do it and I'm not? And then the second is when people directly try and give advice to someone where they don't know who's on the other side of the mic. I think it can be disingenuous if they're trying to say that the way they're doing things is the only way. So those are just some of my knee-jerk reactions based on one of your comments, but I'd love your guys' take on that.
Do you want to go, Nico?
Sure. No, I'm always been on the balance of obviously learning before you go in, but taking imperfect action. So you want to learn as you go. I didn't know not a lot when we bought our first property, and we made a few mistakes, and looking back when we put our first tenants in, I was like, oh, I could do this and this. So I've learned so much in these last 2 years, and I have to go back to giving Anna credit. Yeah. So at our previous brokerage, we were in a kind of a group accountability group, but we would actually text on the side and have conversations. And then we ended up doing just one-on-one calls, and we still do these one-on-one calls about our business and about investing. So when Anna shared that story about going to that meetup, the Cashflow Breakfast Club, for the first time, she told me, she said, hey, you should really read this book. It's about real estate agents and real estate investing. And I think you'd connect with it. And it was like a light bulb moment for me because, you as an agent, it's a grind. You're doing showings, you're writing contracts, you're doing a whole lot, but you're not really building wealth. You're building that active income. So it really sat with me. And since then, I consumed a lot of books. I was on the Bigger Pockets forums. I was just trying to learn, but I would say it was a balance of both learning, but also taking action. Doing that first bird project, I really didn't know what I was doing. We were fixing it to renovate for sale, whereas there's a few things that you can do instead. So I would say for me, it was more of imperfect action, but also reflecting and learning about what you did. Because like you said, Aaron, people are going to say whatever on the internet, and it really depends on who you follow and who you're being mindful to, because you don't want to take advice from somebody that's not in a position where you want to be. You want to be in those rooms where your dreams are their everyday life. I wanted to be connected with people that are doing what I wanted to be doing. Just being mindful that everyone's going to give their 2 cents. Me being a newer real estate investor, I was nervous to tell people that I was investing in real estate, but just having one property. So that's one of the reasons why Anna and I actually started the podcast as well, is to just share our experiences, even as newer investors, as agents, and just paying it forward. And I'm sure that's why you're doing your podcast, is to hear from other people, pay it forward.
100%. Anna, what do you think?
It's very easy to go down the social media rabbit hole and hear all of these, like I said, burn the boats. You need 1,000 doors. This is for, I think a lot of people also assume like investing is for rich people, but I think as cliche as it probably sounds, it's like really understanding what your personal goals are, like what's important to you. Does determine what your investing strategy ends up becoming, whether you want cash flow, whether you want appreciation. Maybe you love your W-2 job and you don't ever want to leave it, but you want to diversify your portfolio. That's a whole different goal than like me wanting to not work actively for income or retire my husband from his W-2. So I think a lot of people get pulled in all these different directions because they feel like they need to do all these things in investing because they hear about all these different techniques and all these people are successful doing this, that, and the other. And it really comes down to understanding what your individual goal is, what investing strategy marries well with that goal, and then getting really good at that one strategy before you decide to diversify your portfolio into a bunch of other strategies. Because I think people get wrapped around the axle and they end up in that analysis paralysis phase, or they overextend themselves because they're trying to do everything and they don't need to. I think that's the downfall of social media. Lots of great information that you can learn, stuff like this that you wouldn't have been able to learn 10 or 20 years ago. You would have had to figure it out on your own, but almost too much information.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And the way I try and think of it is like everyone's perspective, especially people that have had some success, is valuable.
Yes.
Is it completely applicable to my situation? Probably not. And so I think if you put up that small barrier of, hey, let me interpret this and find the value as it pertains to my situation and take those valuable parts and consider it in my own strategy, but don't adopt it as if I can just do exactly what they did, because I am not them and they are not me.
Correct.
You have 4 kids. Nico, I'm speculating maybe at some point you'll have kids. I have 3 kids, and it's pretty hard to overstate how significant of a change it is when you have a kid and it changes your financial picture immediately, but it introduces their life trajectory within your life trajectory. And so that's something that you can't fit onto a financial planning spreadsheet. These are things that you can take a wild guess of what it might cost to raise a kid based on some averages. But ultimately, these things make a big difference. You guys know this about my story, but we bought 8 rentals across 3 states using mostly our own money. And we can't do that now. We can't save up money the way we were able to before we had kids. We were dual income, no kids. Then we had 1 kid. And my wife she took time off and then she came back part-time. And all the while our expenses were ballooning, right? So if I took advice from someone who's 27 and has no kids and not even a partner, but they have some $500,000 a year wholesaling business that they say they can run with 2 hours a week, like that's probably not the right parallel for me to be taking influence from. So I just call that out because I think that's an important thing as people consume a lot of content. And to Nico's point, it's like taking action is actually where the rubber meets the road and where you gain your experience. And you probably are going to make some avoidable mistakes the first 1 or 2 or even several deals, but it's better to do that on something that's lower stakes and where you're just getting your footing than to try and go after some gargantuan 200-unit apartment building with your first deal because somebody told you could, and then you make a mistake with a bunch of other people's money on the line. So that's my view. And I know I got my Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor book up on my shelf here. We're all bonded by being in Coach Carson's community. And I always applaud him because he came out with a contrarian view. Yeah. He went against it seems crazy that this would be a contrarian view, but he went out against the scale to infinity. And that's your way to financial freedom. And he said, what's the fewest amount of investments that you need to meet your financial objectives so that you can do what matters to you in your life? Yeah. And I think that philosophy has resonated with me, and I'd venture to guess with you guys too.
Yeah.
For sure. I think we had Coach on the podcast last week, and he talked about his beginning stages doing tons of fix and flips. I think he said he did 60 fix and flips back in the day. And he was doing this because his only mentor that he knew was the one that was scale. Like you mentioned, Aaron, he shifted his goals. he looked back, especially I think it was around 2007, 2008 when the market was changing. He had to reflect and take and look in and say, hey, why am I even doing this? Am I scaling, or do I want to just have a comfortable life and have properties? So yeah, and I really resonated with the small and mighty just because neither one of us want to have hundreds and thousands of doors. We want to have a sustainable portfolio and that can sustain our lifestyle, which brought us to the RPM community. And that's how we met Aaron. But yeah, that's super important.
Awesome. So there's so many topics I want to hit, and I know we don't only have so much time. So let me take them in what I think will hopefully be the most impactful order. Since you guys are both agents and you have the perspective of what it takes to be an agent and how that has influenced and helped you as investors, one of the most common questions I see come up at some point, usually towards the beginning of a real estate investor's journey, is, should I go get my license? It's a common thought that I think sometimes pops into their head more as a default than as an actual, they see the value. So I'm curious what your guys' takes are. Obviously, I think it sounds like you both did it in reverse order. We became agents, then investors. But if somebody came to you and they were 6 months in and maybe they had one deal or they were looking at their first and said, hey, should I get my license? What would you tell them?
Ooh, that's a tough one. If they're going to get their license just to do their own investment properties, I do think it's worthwhile because you have access to a lot of tools. The MLS, if you play your cards, you have access to quite a network of real estate agents in your area or in your wherever you're looking to invest. The only thing I would caution them with is that there are fees associated with being an agent and with keeping up, like with getting your license and then with keeping up your license. And then you have to, so to keep that cost in mind and do that cost analysis, this is the financial person in me. Is it worth getting it right away? Are you doing that many deals that financially it makes sense to get the license for yourself? Or what's that break even point where, okay, I'm doing this many transactions and it makes sense for me to go get my license at this point because the benefits outweigh the costs of becoming an agent. That's my take.
Yeah, I would say being an agent first, and I gotta speak for Anna, it definitely helped us understand the process. There is a process of buying a home. You put out offers, understanding contingencies, everything that goes into writing an offer. I learned a ton in my first year as an agent, which definitely helped me moving forward because when I started, it was during the pandemic. And I'm sure you guys remember the interest rates were really low and the DMV over here in Maryland and Virginia was super competitive. As a newer agent, you're mainly working with buyers. So you were trying to cater your offer to win and sometimes 10, 20 offers. So I think having that experience definitely helped me because you can understand, hey, maybe we have a shorter contingency with a home inspection of 2 days. Maybe that might beat out the other offer that's a little bit higher because we don't have a financing contingency. You're already pre-approved. So understanding like how to be competitive in this market, which, yes, the market shifted a little with interest rates, but I don't know how it is in Houston, but over here, it's still competitive. People are still buying homes just because there's a shortage. I think that what Anna said is very important. You want to know what your goals are with becoming an agent. If you're just becoming an agent because you want to have your license, I don't think it's worth it. But we have investor friends that my friend Alejandro has it because he has access to the MLS and he's literally the first person to write an offer on every fix and flip around here in the Montgomery County area. So he's doing it because he wants to have access and he wants to be the first and that can give him a leg up. But you really want to know what is your goals for getting your license? Because if you're just getting it to get it, it's not worth it, in my opinion.
Got it. So a couple of things I heard are there is a financial calculation of if you're going to do a certain amount of deals and therefore save on whatever commissions you would pay to another agent, that can be how you calculate the financial break even, but then a more intangible standpoint, you have the skills of learning transactions end to end, offer strategy, really understanding and keeping a finger on the pulse of the local inventory, the relationships that you gain from helping other people through transactions, or in Nico, the example you just gave, like if somebody has their own business where it's based on having an advantage and being the first to make an offer on new properties as they come up, you can make it back that way as well, right? Did I capture that okay?
Yeah. And then the networking piece, like Nico, his house hack was because of an agent that he did a transaction with a couple of years ago. And then Nico actually brought Brian and I property that we're currently looking at, I haven't given Nico an update on this, but it was a wholesale deal that Nico heard of from somebody that he worked with a couple years ago and he brought to us. So I think that network is pretty invaluable if you know how to utilize it. I think that's the key in all of this stuff. You can become an agent, but if you don't learn how to use the tools, it's still not very valuable to you.
That leads me very well. Sorry, Nico, do you have something on that? But that leads very well into what I was going to ask next, which is, so let's say you decide, you think that through and you say, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense for me to become an agent, but I really want to find an agent that has all those qualities and can act on my behalf. What are the biggest pieces of advice you would give to somebody who's looking for a partner, an agent, investor-friendly agent that they want to build and grow a portfolio with in that market long term, not just one transaction, but somebody they want to really be part of their team?
Yeah. I think the first question you want to ask is if they're an investor themselves. A lot of people, a lot of agents are going to say they're investor friendly agents just because they're trying to get business. And it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. So you want to ask them if they're investing and where they're investing. So if they're out of state investing, that's a little bit different because they know other markets, maybe not the best or investor friendly in the market that you're looking to invest in. I invest currently locally here in Maryland. I would consider myself an investor friendly agent. I understand all the key terms where, the ARV, the after repair value, what can make a good deal. So that's super important. You want to know somebody that's hyper local because they're going to connect you with local contractors to give you more accurate bids on construction costs. They're going to hook you up with local lenders as well. So having an investor friendly agent is super important because you don't want to just work with an agent that has done one or two transactions that are the traditional way. And I just want to tell a quick story because I think it's relevant. Before I became an investor, I was a real estate agent, and I had a friend of mine who was looking to buy a home, and he was self-employed. He wasn't the most bankable person to lend to. So I basically, this is what you do as a real estate agent. You partner with a lender and you go through the process of pre-approval. You got to submit your W-2s, tax returns, all the fun stuff. But basically after that process, the lender said, hey, you can't buy a home right now. We have to wait till maybe a year or two with tax returns and things like that. He was a little discouraged. I was a little discouraged because he was a good friend of mine. A couple months down the road, I went to the meetup and I learned about hard money lenders, which sounds scary, but it's more of a hard asset lender where they look at the property and less of the borrower. And kind of light bulb went off where I said, hey, I should probably connect these two people to see if they can buy a home. Long story short, I was able to help one of my good friends purchase his first home. Now this is a fix and flip. So it's not like one he's going to live in, but he partnered with a hard money lender to purchase it. He's in the process of renovating it now, and then I'm going to resell it. So as an agent, you can double dip. You can help them on the buy side, and then you can help them on the sell side. So it can really be a win for agents to be investor friendly.
So I guess it's my turn.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back real quick to the whether you should get your license or not. I will also say it depends on what market you're in. So like we invest in Ohio. I don't have my Ohio license, nor do I plan to get my Ohio license because I don't know that market very well. So I think that's probably another thought. It's where do you want to be an investor? Because if you live in one area and you get your license there, but you're investing across the country, the license may not be as valuable to you. So there's that thought. Now, as far as how to vet, so I would say the first thing that we did, because we didn't know an Ohio agent in the beginning, is we went to other investors to go ask about agents in a particular area. We went to the Bigger Pots forum where you can ask who's an investor friendly agent in Akron, ask other investors for agents that they have worked with and that they know and trust. I think that's a good shortcut to finding, I'll say, the short list of names in a particular area because these investors have worked with these people in the past. And then I agree with Nico as far as asking questions like, do they have investment properties or have they been investors themselves? How do they find their deals? That's another one because I know a lot of agents who are investor friendly agents and they do work with investors, but it's because they have a very well seasoned investor that says, here's exactly what I'm looking for. This is exactly what I want. And the agent doesn't necessarily understand what goes into the process of finding the deals and crafting the offer. They just basically are writing it out per the direction of the investor. But like for them to actually understand as an investor friendly agent, like the key terms, how they find deals. Is it just on the MLS, or do they have a network of wholesalers or off market leads? So I think that's another telling question if you ask them, how do they come across properties? And then one question that is random, but I found interesting that has worked for us is, if there's a property on the market and we do our analysis and the price that we're willing to offer is well below what they're willing to offer, are you uncomfortable submitting an offer that's below potentially market or potentially what they're asking? Because there's some agents who are like, oh, that's so low, that's insulting. And there's a saying, what is it? If it's not low, if it's not low enough, or if it's not insulting, if it's not low enough or something. I don't remember. Brian says it all. But I think there are some definite traits that investor friendly, like true investor friendly agents have that regular agents just don't have. And it's been very helpful on the other side too. Like when I help clients that don't necessarily want to be investors, as an investor myself, I know a lot of tips and tricks to helping them get into properties that I don't think regular agents would know. If there's a tenant in place, offering them cash for keys. Lots of agents don't even know what that means.
Yeah. No, there's all sorts of, especially if you're bigger pockets. If you've listened to any number of podcasts or read any of the books, there's certain terms that you pick up
Yep.
that if you mention them in front of an agent and they've never heard of it,
They're
that's almost
nice.
like that's like a base level of entry knowledge
Yeah.
for working with investors. And I think too that if you encounter that, I say this from experience, like I've blown past some of those warning signs at certain points in the past where I'm like, I really like them as a person. They're really nice. And I know that they will help me, but they end up being more of a glorified transaction coordinator where I'm doing the research and I'm coming with the point of view, and they're not necessarily challenging or like guiding. Especially I'm a long distance investor. I need somebody that has that local knowledge and can help guide not only the strategy of like where I'm looking, but like partner on creating the right buy box. Don't just take everything I say without offering some sort of point of view.
Yeah.
Nico, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah. Can I just add some? I just thought of it is I'm a millennial and I'm helping people buy a lot of times friends their first homes. This actually just happened a couple months ago where we put an offer on a home, and when we were touring it, it had a walkout basement. It had 2 rooms in the basement. It had a little kitchenette. And me, I'm like, ooh, this would be a great house hack. It was actually during the time where I was looking for a house hack. And I brought that up to them because affordability is a challenge for a lot of people my age to buy their first homes. Just giving them that idea, hey, maybe if you decided to rent this out, you can help offset your mortgage. I can help you find a qualified tenant. And just giving them that option is invaluable. Most people are buying their homes and not even really thinking about it. They're like, hey, I just want to buy my home, and we're excited. Understanding that they have the option to do that could be really beneficial.
I do coaching now and I help new investors get started, specifically if they want to do long distance investing. That's my sweet spot. But a lot of it is just they're not aware of the options, right? Like house hacking is a great local option, even in an expensive market that can take something that feels completely out of reach and at least put it on the table for you to consider. Similarly, long distance investing isn't something that most people think is possible. You guys live in an expensive coastal market. I grew up in an expensive coastal market. And people make a lot of money in those places, but they can't afford to buy a 3-bed, 2-bath rental property because it's going to be $1,000 a month underwater cash flow wise.
Yep.
So the thought never really crosses people's mind that they could go after a different strategy or a different location. So some of that like basic education, I appreciate that. I think I told you guys the story of the first agent I worked with. We got really lucky. We met him through Zillow. He was just happened to be the person that responded to us, but he really sat down with us and we had virtually zero knowledge of we didn't know the difference between a primary property and an investment property, the different lending, the different insurance. And he sat down and he spent time with us, educating us on those differences, how we should perhaps think about those things and factor them in. Really felt the partnership. It wasn't just, hey, call me when you're ready to make an offer. To me, that's what makes the difference between somebody who's actually a long-term team member that you're going to go back to time and time again versus just somebody that you work with for a single transaction. But let's see, we have time for, I think, one last topic. I want to round it out because I think it's come up several times in this interview so far. In-person meetups. So this is something you guys got your start as investors and even agents during the COVID era where a lot of that stuff was suppressed or didn't even exist. But it sounds like those have been a huge driver of your guys' network and sounds like even how you guys connected. What do you think? How has that fit into your guys' lives? I know you now are participate and even run one of them, but what is the value of those? Did it even be replaced, or do you think that needs to be part of some journey?
Personally, I think it should be of everyone's journey. Because you surround yourself with like-minded individuals. You might go home and you might have family members that think you're completely off your rocker for thinking about doing something. Because some people just they fear what they don't understand. And I feel like putting yourself in a room with other people that want similar type things, like real estate investing, or interested in it. One, it helps keep you encouraged to not give up, because if you go home and people are telling you you're nuts, like that's you're more likely to not move forward with it. You expand your network by meeting people that are a couple steps ahead of you, maybe not too far ahead, but it looks like it's doable. Like you're like, there's a target that I can reach. And then you meet people that are way ahead of where you are, but where you want to be. And you can learn from that meeting. You don't have to repeat the same mistakes. So I feel like being in a group like that, one, is motivational. Two, it expands your network to opportunities, whether it's financing, finding deals, finding partnerships. Like you just get this whole network, and all of those people you meet there know other people that are also investors, and it just keeps growing from there. So I highly encourage, like, I talked to someone at one of these meetups and she said she did a lot of the big kid stuff and it was super useful, but it's not the same as being in a room with someone face to face that you can talk to and ask questions to directly and get that like mutual feeling, that understanding, that sense of community. Everybody, every human wants some sort of sense of community.
Yeah. For me, it was invaluable. Similar to Anna, when I first attended in person one, I was by the door. I was like, because I've been to a few, and I was like, hey, once they start pitching, I'm out. But they, like Anna said, they never did, and it was more giving information, giving education, and networking with people. So I haven't missed one since. And then Anna and I started actually hosting it. So we became leaders. And what do they say? The best way
To
to learn
teach.
something is by teaching it. So it was super nervous for me because I started late last year. I would say actually around this time, maybe October last year, leading. And mind you, I only had, I think, one property at the time. I was like, what do I have to offer? But constantly having those conversations about different topics. Our Cash Flow Breakfast Club has a 12-month curriculum with different topics every month. So we're talking about creative finance, and we're talking about house hacking one day. We're talking about the debt snowball. So it's a bunch of different topics. But obviously, the most important part is networking with different people and understanding their buy box. When I was doing that Burr project, the person that did the cash out refinance was a lender that I met at the Casual Breakfast Club, and he shopped my deal around and got me a pretty good rate, which I thought last year wasn't the best, but now looking at interest rates now, I'm like, wow, like that was a really good deal. Just constantly, and I said it, constantly having these conversations with people that are interested in what you're interested in, and being in rooms that are with people that are above you, but also maybe just starting out. Anna and I are 2 years in, but we have a lot of experience that we can share with people that are just starting out. So being able to coach people, but also being coachable to the people, the alumni, which kind of led us to Coach Carson's community. And I know that's online, but it's also pretty personable. So I love the community aspect of real estate investing. I find it a little bit more go-giving than the actual agent side of real estate investing. People are a little bit more open to sharing. Yeah. Yeah. Open to sharing their failures and successes. I think that in-person meetup invaluable for me, and I'm going to continue to do it for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Anna.
No, I say that the one caveat I will say to just like reading or listening to a podcast, if you go to these meetups, is actually doing something, like taking the next step after that meetup. Cause we tell people all the time, I've told several people, if you come today and you spend a couple hours and you meet some great people, but then this is where it ends and you don't do anything with it, and you don't, maybe you come next month and then you chat with the same people, like then you're cut. You might as well just sit at home and watch like Netflix and not like you're wasting your time. So I will say that it's invaluable, but you actually have to make the effort to make it worthwhile, because we showed up every day. So someone like I took an interest in us and in our success because he saw that we were putting in the work, which opened up to going to bigger pockets because he recommended it. He's, you guys should totally go. Where then we accidentally had lunch with Chad, and then Chad was great and we pursued that like relationship. So it takes effort. This isn't just you show up and magically happens. Like there is some effort that you have to put from your part to actually get value and provide value to those relationships.
Yeah, no, great takeaways there. And Nico, I love what you said too. It's, hey, you guys have a couple of years of experience, but guess what? That's a hell of a lot more relatable to the person who's starting out, super excited, but that doesn't have their first deal yet. They're probably going to be more interested in having a conversation with you than having a conversation with Grant Cardone, right? I don't know. I think of it that way at least. Like, who can I relate to? Who's gone through like your story, Nico, about going through that first burr with your dad and like, you over remodeled a little bit compared to what you might do. It's like, that is relatable to me. And that's a direct actionable takeaway that I would hear from your story that could save me a lot of money if I was in a comparable situation. And the same thing, it's like the natural evolution of your story, how you did it with your husband and how you guys went into different markets. These stories are worth sharing. I know that's why you guys have a podcast. That's why I have a podcast. And that the in-person meetings are just a great place to be able to like really open up and expand those stories, give the knowledge that you've been given forward and also, observe else around you that are ahead. So
Yeah. Can I add to that real quick? I know we're almost
Mhm.
done, but like that
Okay.
actually reminded the last meetup we had because Nico and I are part of the same group, but different locations. And it's several people have actually come up to Brian and I and said how our stories, like us three, like our type of stories that are like in the last couple of years is so much more relatable to them, even from like the Chads or the Omnis that seem so far ahead. Like they feel like they're behind and they're never going to get to where the Chads and the Omnis of the world are. But then hearing how we've gotten to where we are, even in the last couple of years, you hit it on the head. They're just like, wow, I can do that. It's achievable for me too.
100%. So I love what you guys do. You're both go-givers. You have an amazing podcast. I want to give you a chance to drop some plugs. Where can people find you? Tell us about the podcast, the meetup, shoot away.
For sure. Anna, you can go ahead
Oh,
first. Ladies
thank
first.
you. Well, if you're looking for a meetup, if you are anywhere near Arlington, we do the Cash Flow Breakfast Club in Lions Park in Arlington. So if you're Alexandria, Arlington, maybe some parts of Fairfax County, there are other meetups, but ours is specifically in Arlington. Our next one is actually coming up November 20th. So I don't know when this comes out. If not, just check up on Meetup. You'll be able to see Cash Flow Breakfast Club and you can see all the different locations and see when they're taking place. To get in contact with me personally, I'm usually on Instagram where you can find me, Anna Bialek _realtor. That's Anna with one N and Bialek is Bialek. That's me.
You forgot our
Oh,
podcast.
shit.
So
Yeah, sorry. And we have a podcast that we've talked about a million times, but I don't know. Nico manages most of the podcast stuff. So I was going to let him give you
yeah,
the details on how to found the podcast.
I got it. I got it. Yep. So our podcast is Agent to Investor, the number two. So Agent to Investor podcast. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And we just talk once a week about the agent side of real estate investing. We talk about our stories, Anna and our stories about our journey, but also on the agent side. So we talk about what we're seeing with affordability and things like that. We have great guests. We had Aaron come on. So his episode will be coming out shortly. So we are super excited and we love doing it. Just Aaron, we want everything we're learning, we want to pay it forward. And if you guys have questions or anything like that, please reach out to us. And if you have a topic that you want us to talk about, please reach out to us. But yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram and Garcia Official on all social platforms, but you can find me on Facebook and things like that. But yeah, Aaron, thank you so much for having us on. This has been a really fun. We don't get to get interviewed much, so it's fun being on the other
Yeah,
side.
this is Nico's first
100%.
time. You're his first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
Hope
what an
I
honor.
did all right.
What an honor. No, you guys have been great. I appreciate your time. And I'll make sure to include all the links you mentioned in the show notes so people can find you. And we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
For sure. We'll do an update.
Yes. All right,
Thank
talk
you.
soon, guys. Thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. As you may know, podcasts are very difficult to grow organically. If you're getting value from today's episode, I'd deeply appreciate if you can take 30 seconds to leave my show a 5-star rating and review. This will go a long way to helping me reach more listeners just like you. Thank you so much in advance.